All right, welcome to Inside the Barrel. I don't know what episode we're on, so we're going to stop keeping count of it. But John and I are going to take you through being, a technical consultant in the ServiceNow space, a little bit behind the scenes, getting our hands dirty on, trying to solve these problems for clients, technical things in order to, make your life easier when you have to go and do it. So with that, we'll just dive, quickly in. We have a really fun packed schedule for you. Maybe it's packed, who knows? But essentially what we're going to do, if you've seen our previous episodes, we've been talking about the Now framework and a lot of the transition that ServiceNow is going through on enabling developers to, build their own components or widgets, on their local machine and then deploy those things up. And so what today we're going to do is our part 3 of deploying. So we're going to kind of take you, fast track you through 1 and 2, and then get you to a part where we walk through some code on what we're trying to do. And then we're going to, deploy that and, see what it looks like in the instance. So hopefully John woke up his instance this morning.
I did.
Yes. Nice. Cool. So I think we could kind of go right into, screen sharing, John, unless you wanted to, add anything else.
No, I think you did a good job on that one. Yeah, we can jump right on in.
Cool. All right. Go
I was just going to say, I even have my terminal window ready to go.
Man, so good. So just kind of a little recap. If you are coming into this for the first time, the one thing we do is we install the SNNC binary. There is some docs on installing that SNC binary, which maybe I'll quickly find for John.
How do you do the version? Is it SNC?
Dash version.
Is it just dash version? Okay.
I think it is. Nope, no. I lied. But
I want to say it's the UI component.
Yeah, that's probably it. That's probably
Maybe it is. Yeah, nice. There we go.
Yeah, and you can get this on the store. Let me see if we can quickly find this for people so they have it. Store. Let's see, CLI. Yeah. Maybe I'm terrible at Googling. All right, you just take my word for it. You can get this on the store. Yeah, I would just type in like ServiceNow CLI, ServiceNow store. There is a deprecated NPM module one that they went with originally in like Orlando. But as of like Quebec and Rome, the official version 1.0 is in the ServiceNow store. So yeah, you'll be able to do that. Great. Okay, so then let's make sure. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that you are logged into this instance. So if you type in SNC space UI dash component and then log in, we will see.
You just log in. It's not dash, is it?
Yeah, I think it's just log in.
What does that require? Oh,
so
there we go. That's what I wanted. Okay. So we want.
So you may want to do this off screen if you don't want your password to be shown. But just for people, you're going to type in -- host to change to the your dev instance, and then you'll do your username, probably admin if it's a dev instance, and then your admin password. But we'll try to prevent John from having to reset his password.
So something like that, and then
username.
Oops. Now, did we decide we had to put the host in quotes? I think we did.
I think we did for safety, but I don't know if you actually need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't worry about it right now then. and then admin, and then before I move this off screen, you do that and then put in your password. So let me move that over there. Do that real quick. All right. So it does come up and say connection to the URL successful and credentials saved. And let me bring
but it probably still shows your password above. Yeah, cool.
That's
so
why I cleared
we're
it.
definitely connected. Yeah, so now you could do that login command. So SNC space UI-component login, and that should connect to it.
Now, is that just for this?
Oh wait, no, never mind. It's just that one time. Sorry, you may have to do that again off screen.
Yeah,
but
that's fine.
What that does? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, does it only work for the time you have that terminal session open? Like if I close this, does it disconnect that or whatever?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's for this session. There is that profile set that you normally could do with the CLI, but I haven't found the way to get that to properly remember that information. So I've kind of just gone with this login route. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is, can you type PWD? Like, where are we?
What did you say?
PWD. It tells us where we're located on your computer. So do we want to CD into like a development folder?
Generally, I keep it in. I put these things in my documents because I have iCloud sync going on. So
let's do it.
Let's see. Is that within?
It should be there. Yeah.
Well, let's just make sure. Or ls. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And then what is it? mkdir.
Yeah, mkdir, and then just name it something.
I don't remember what.
What
we're on, so I'm gonna do 10.
Okay. And then let's CD into it. And I sent you a link, John, but one of the things that I want to highlight is there is the reference guide for the Now Experience UI framework. And I highly, highly, highly recommend just reading through that. Just in general, like it'll talk you through like how this is based on the React, framework. It'll tell you about the security behind it. It'll give you a lot of these cores. Like if you're ever like kind of stuck on, what does state do or view do, like this is where this reference guide is good for. What it isn't great at is telling you like if you're stuck on how something works, this isn't the right place for that. You may end up in like React documentations or things like that, but this is a really good starting point that I highly recommend you read.
Perfect.
The other section here so under like main concepts, it talks about the React related concepts in here. And some of them are React and some of them are not React. But like state, for example, is here. So it kind of walks you through how state works. The other thing is under recipes examples. If you ever get stuck and you just want to see how they got it working, if you all the way on the bottom, there's examples. Here's some examples that ServiceNow provides for you to kind of like copy and paste and walk through. So they talk about what concepts they're covering and then, what they're going to build. So this is really, really useful if like, you're just like, how do I do this thing? Let me learn by example. And so they give you under the setup, it tells you follow the steps in the README in order to, get this kind of working. So just wanted to give that shout out. The documentation is probably constantly improving on here, and but the main concepts are probably the core of what you want here. So on that documentation, let's go up to the CLI. We're outside of the UI framework. Let's go to the development flow, I think it is. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a project. So you're going to follow a similar thing here.
See if we can't get everything on the same screen.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah.
SNC UI component.
This would be like your company name of some sort.
Now, is this that piece that I have to use the X thing from my instance?
This is not the piece. This is the, you have to use the @ sign for this one. So this is technically building the scaffolding for your NPM module. All of these components that you build are essentially like NPM modules. So normally you would deploy these modules to like a registry. And normally the registry you have is related to like your organization or your company. So normally this would be like Cask in our case. So
right.
But that's okay. And so we'll do a simple report, I think is what we called this last time. So
yep.
Yeah, perfect. So this should go and create. So this is creating an online one. Oh, your name can't contain capital letters. So this is going to create an online one, and it should connect to that dev instance that we set up earlier. And it created the scope for us. So the scope of our project is, as it says there. So in that instance, that scope should be created. You're first going to want to CD into the folder, John, I think. Oh, you're already there. Perfect. So yeah, now just run a npm install.
Now, tell me this, does it remember certain things? Because I'm pretty sure that's not the actual, that is not my instance number.
It should. We'll find that out real quick when we deploy it. So.
Well, I want to say that's the other one, the other.
Oh, so that could be where that profile set comes in.
Yeah.
Was
it's
that
not
one
difficult.
Okay.
Is that one online? No, not right now. And it's also Rome. And I think we had issues with Rome.
Yeah. Well, thankfully this part won't take us very long. So if we have to, go back, now we'll learn why it's important to do the profile set.
Yes.
Yeah, so it sounds like if we're guessing right here, it's that logging command allows you to develop against that instance. So like if you ever needed to pull data from that instance, whereas the profile set is for creation time to create on that instance.
So we could still develop against one instance, and when we deploy, we can deploy it to whatever that X1 is and be okay, even though we developed on a different one.
The problem you're going to run into is there's a lot of ServiceNow templates or like fills in data related to your other instance. So it's going to yell at you saying like that scope doesn't exist, or it should work, right? But if it yells at us, we'd probably have to do some transitioning of work. So, But in our case, it's okay. We also we talked about, on the last call around like offline versus online.
Right.
And so if you do start offline, it may be painful to try to port it to online. So you may just end up in a case, at least for now, until they do a better transition or documentation on how to go from offline to online, just like copying your code from one to the other, right? So just kind of keep that in mind if you start offline. Look at all this beautiful C code. Yeah. Imagine if you had to like type all this out.
Ugh. But this fills in, a lot of that stuff within the folder, right?
Yes.
I think you called it scaffolding or something.
This is what it's doing, is creating your node modules. That's essentially what it's doing. So
in there is what you're getting what it's adding in.
Yeah, and so that's because part of ServiceNow's framework is referencing that data. These are essentially open source plugins or modules that were developed to make your life easier. So rather than having to create that on every project, very similar to like your Java and Maven, dependency like thing, this is doing it. And because Node is cross-platform, sometimes it actually has to build components for your specific platform, right? So this is what this is doing. It's saying like, hey, Node GYP needs to be built on your machine for your architecture. So it's doing that for you here and then storing that in your Node modules.
Okay.
But maybe we should tell Cask to buy you a better computer, because it's taken a while.
I don't think this is a bad computer.
It's not a developer computer. We're developing now.
Oh, so I need one of those M1 32 gig MacBooks, huh?
Yeah, you need like 64 gigs of RAM.
Ooh,
and like, quad core.
I don't know that it's whatever their M1 chip is now. It used to be you could get that i9 and burn yourself, but now it's all M1s and whatnot.
And it's interesting. I wonder if the M1 support all of the things that you would need to develop on, right? Because a lot of that stuff has to be rebuilt for M1. So I remember like Chrome wasn't supported out of the gate when they released the Mac. Yeah, just because Google didn't have access to that, M1, right? So
sure, yeah.
So they had to. Oof. So what's your plans for this weekend, John? While we wait.
This weekend, boy, I'm not even sure I've thought that far ahead.
You're like, it's Wednesday at 11.
I was thinking, so towards the end of this week, it's supposed to get warmer, and by that's relative. Obviously, it's supposed to be like 87 today, but by the end of the week, we're supposed to be in the mid 90s. And I was thinking maybe tomorrow or Friday after work, heading up to there's a lake near us called Bear Lake, and heading up there for a couple hours. It's really nice when you go after work because it's a little cooler. There's a lot less people, and it's more enjoyable because it's not necessarily as hot. So you just sit out there on the beach, let the kids play, and just relax. So there we might do that.
So is it called Bear Lake because there's bears, or the lake is shaped like a bear?
There used to be bears in the area way back when, I believe is why it got called Bear Lake. But it's a really neat lake. It's really blue because of the lake itself, and it's
all the pollution.
Really cold. No, it's not pollution, but it's really cold too. Like probably even this time of year, even though it's low, it's probably still in the like upper 50s, low 60s temperature wise.
Wow. Okay. No thanks. Not jumping in. All right. I'll take the Bears instead of the lake. So yeah, so it looks like it installed, which is awesome. So what we'll first do is we should be able to run the SNC develop. So SNC UI-component develop. And then I know you have to do a port because one of your ports are being used. So do -- port.
I think we're going to use 4,000.
Sure, that works. And it should run or compile. Don't mind any of those unpromised rejections. That's ServiceNow has to improve
See,
that in
this
the
is
future.
this is what I'm worried about. I'm pretty sure my X code should be different than that 9,000 number.
But this is at least telling us we're connected to the one we logged into, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Good.
That's good. I think you're right about the profile set, that we're still some internal components reference that, and we're gonna have a problem there.
Yeah. And I wonder if, like, I remember last time we tried this, it did hang on this for a while. I wonder if that's because of that.
Yeah.
So we'll
Very
get another
possible.
few seconds. Where's the like fast forward button on life right now? It's like,
I know, our magic oven. Boop.
yeah.
Oh, look, we're done.
Yeah. So let's while that's running, let's open another terminal and just kind of get it set up for just in case, right? So let's create a new directory, or go cd into your documents, and then we'll create a new directory.
Let's see, what are we on?
Perfect. And cd into that. And now we're gonna do, well, I guess. I wonder.
We got to do that. Don't we need to do that profile set then?
Yeah. So let me find that exact command for you. So all these commands I'm looking up are on that reference page. I'm just like quickly going to doing it. So it looks like it is SNC configure profile set. And I think you can name this profile actually. So we should be able to do.
So is it like it's all separate words? SNC configure profile set. There's no dash.
Yeah, that is correct. But it doesn't look like it allows us to name it based on that. Okay. So is that the right instance?
That is the correct Quebec instance, yes.
Cool. Press enter. Basic. Admin.
We want JSON.
I like YAML, but it's just me. Okay. So it looks like we're working. So that's interesting. So that probably saved because you logged in on it first, right? Right, you ran that login command.
Well, we were already logged in as far as the current session goes, I suppose.
Yeah, so let's try creating a new project in this one and see. So SNC, UI-component project, and then -- name, and then the @ sign.
Got to be lowercase.
And then simple report too. Super simple report.
Ooh, super simple report. Let's do that.
And then description. Yeah. Let's see what that does.
Yeah, so that's the correct scope now.
All right. So that's, well, now you have to run npm install on this one.
So can we just close this guy over here? And
so let's scroll up. Show me again, if you can. What was the scope that this one created it? It's probably a lot of.
It's way up there.
And my guess is in the future. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I'm pretty sure this was in the 9,000s for that scope.
Aren't those the same numbers? So 92893.
That is the incorrect. Where did it make it? Where did it show?
Scroll down a little bit. Right above that guy's head.
Oh. So that's really weird. Yeah, so that's not the right.
You going crazy, John? You're going crazy.
So is that the right scope? I mean, is that the right number for
that should be
this?
That's okay. You wanted to create 2 projects. That's fine. So let's go to the one on the left that our proxy server is failing. And let's just make sure our instance is up, which I'm assuming you'll refresh that page.
So it's right here. I mean,
and go to, I think we could check the property there, right? Like if it may be working. Let's go to open up a tab and go to localhost 4000. It normally should say that it's compiling. So I don't think, 4,000 it will. Yeah, it's not because it hasn't. So let's control C this and just try it again. One more time. Yeah. Try changing the port, or that's fine. That's okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. But while we wait for that, then go to your instance. We should be able to find that property. So sys_properties.list. And in the value, yeah, I would just type in that value x_. Maybe not.
Oh, boom! There we go.
So that one just compiled.
Blew it up. Oh, I don't. This is the wrong. Pretty sure that's the wrong project.
Okay, so now we should go to localhost 4000. Should be good. Should be running our component that does nothing. Yay!
Right.
That's totally fine. So let's just quickly go into that. So let's open that folder so that that's working. In Visual Studio Code.
Oh, in Visual Studio, okay.
Yeah. The 10 folder. Yes. Okay, cool. So let's go into source and then the simple report and then index. And then just in that div on line 7, let's just add, hi. Yeah, perfect. Save that and check your local host. That should refresh for us.
Yep.
The full report. Cool. So now what I think, since we haven't demo deploying, let's just deploy this to the instance, and then we'll do that part first. So you can control C that it's running now. And then now we'll do SNC UI-component space deploy. And while that's doing that, can we go to the Visual Studio Code? Just to let people know it, and then go into the now-ui.json. So here is essentially where you want to make sure that you have a better label than we have and a better description, because it's just going to be called my component on UI Builder. And this is also where you need to validate that your scope name is correct and that your component name, so on line 3, is also correct. What you can do is use that login command to, so like, let's say you create the project offline, you'll use the login command to be able to validate that this is the right scope. So just as an FYI, maybe when we have free time at the end, we'll go and try to break it. So cool. So that looks good. It successfully deployed it. So if you go into your instance now, go into UI Builder.
We should find a terribly named component.
We should find a terribly named component. To give it a second to load this page, because it takes a bit. So, oh man, it wants us. I don't think you have one created. Let's create one real quick. Press the plus button on the create experience. In Rome, this is improved, by the way, so don't mind us. Can you change your scope back to global for now? Yeah, and then click new. We'll speed run this one. And then title it anything. And then the app shell, oh yeah, the app shell UI, you're gonna wanna select the portal app shell. And then the URL, it doesn't matter, just anything super simple. Yeah, nice. And then on the right hand side where the admin panel is, we're gonna go there. We're gonna open up the document, create a new document, and name this, super simple, perfect. Then submit, and then submit. All right, should be good there. Cool. So now go back to the other tab. You can close this one and then refresh this page, and your beautifulness should show up. Super simple exercise. Awesome. Cool. Create a page. Just name it home. Awesome. Create, and shouldn't do this in global scopes, but that's okay. Click done. Right. Awesome. Now we're gonna add a container. So add a component.
Oh, add a container.
Which is okay. It'll give you the option there. I think you just click on it at this point. On the left-hand side, because you selected where you want it, it was right. And then you could click the plus button of that one. You should be able to find my component. It'll have no icon. It'll look ugly. Yeah,
there it is.
Awesome.
Yay.
There you go. And you could click the open button, save it, and then click the open button up there. Awesome. So there we go. Cool. So now we went from building it, logging in, deploying it. So
look at that. We're masters already.
Really well. So now let's do some oven code here and kind of walk through the fun stuff on how to have useful. So I sent you some code. The only thing I would paste that underneath it, or actually before you paste it in, we just need to make sure line 11 is correct. So the one that I gave you, I didn't actually, or let me modify it for you. I'll make it even easier for you, John. And just edit this code that I pasted for you. We want true magic oven. What's that number? 92. What's the, let's see, not
that one, 92893.
892. -92893 that can you go back to your index.js?
This one.
Yep. Cool. All right. You should be able to completely copy the code that I gave you. And we'll walk people through it so they can see some cool stuff.
Am I replacing everything on this?
Yeah. Blow it all.
Boom.
Okay. And then save it. And let's go back to your terminal. And we're going to develop first so we could see it locally. And then port 4000. Oh, it's probably going to yell at you.
Yeah.
Something's running on 8080.
You can't use this port.
So the 3000 one, just for people's awareness, is that's actually a proxy to your dev instance. So if you went to localhost 3000, you'll see that it'll give you a certificate issue, but it'll show you that it's your dev instance. So also super cool. Yep, 8081 is already in use. So you're going to need to run that command again. -- port. And just to show people I'm not crazy, open a new tab and go to localhost 3000. And so you'll see that it's trying to bring you to ServiceNow.
So interesting.
So that is your instance kind of proxied through it. So cool. So eventually this will finish compiling and
something should change here too. I think we have
failed to compile.
Oh.
Cannot resolve. Oh, so you haven't installed. Oh, that's right. We need to install something on terminal. So you can close that or cancel that. You're going to need to npm install at ServiceNow, that the name of that /ui-effect-http. So ServiceNow has some helper modules. You spell npm correctly?
No, I cannot spell npm correctly.
So ServiceNow has some, helper modules that will make your life easier. So one of them is this UI effect HTTP. There's documentation on the effect, on what effect is in React. We won't go into that, but on that reference. But essentially, what this is enabling us to do is make HTTP calls in an easy way. So essentially, what we're going to try to demo here is to show you how to use state easily, how to pull data from your instance locally if you ever needed to make calls to it, how to use properties for your component so that you give configuration possible on the UI builder, and then how to use input from someone interacting with your component to change data in your state.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this last installment, where you get all these hello world examples, and I think even the counter example that ServiceNow has is great, but it doesn't really do much. It doesn't explain how to get data into your component from your instance and do stuff with it. And I think that's I was lamenting that doesn't help me when I'm trying to learn this do much. Sure, I can make a counter, great, but I want better stuff. And so we talked about it. We're like, let's make this do this and that, and then Dorian was like, well, let's have user input too. And I'm like, okay, sure, let's do that. And then we ran into a whole lot of problems trying to get it to work. And then Dorian figured it out and was like, hey, now we've got it working. Let's do this, And so it was. I just think it's a better way to show how something works when you can do something like this versus a hello world or a counter. You know, it's more interactive, and I think it's just better to get your feet wet being able to do something like this.
Yep. So let's refresh that and see what I've given you. Nothing. Of course.
What did you break?
What? Well, let's see what terminal said. Terminal probably told us some stuff.
Terminal, I thought, came back and said compiled successfully.
So what did I give? Maybe I did a typo on the component. Is X92893, is that the right number? Maybe
That's the
I
right
typoed
number.
that.
Oh, is that the right number? Well, let's make sure. 8 or 92893.
No, I typoed it. So go back to index.js. 92893. 9. So take away the 8, the first 8. Yeah.
Yep. Is that the only spot
Got
that
it.
it is? Okay.
That's the only spot. Man, so close.
There we go.
Hey, cool. So we're gonna just click me first to show everyone what this does. It made a call, and it made a call to the incident table. And then I just we'll do a full demo and then we'll go into the code.
Okay.
And then type in problem up there. And then click me. And then we made a call to the problem table. So what this demonstrates, this simple thing, making calls to your instance, managing state, and even taking input from someone using a component. So just, and these 3 things should guide you towards, building really cool stuff now that you know how to utilize this.
Well, it's like the core elements here. I mean, this is what on the Angular portal side, I mean, this is what you're doing. You're always grabbing data and presenting it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the input. I could imagine this being a drop down and doing, as a report goes, you could have date ranges and all that good stuff. But this is a very crucial first steps on getting, it to work the way you want versus the click me where it was just adding a number. This tells you how to get in there.
Yeah, so let's also deploy it because I do want to show something as well, and then we'll dive into the code.
Sure.
And maybe let's change the name of it so that it is in that now-ui.json. Name this, yeah.
That spelling day.
And then maybe the description as well. And when he tries to deploy this, it's actually going to give him an error, but we'll talk about it. And so it yelled at him saying, this already exists. So in order to deploy this and override it, we have to do a -f or -force.
Just one dash, or is it 2?
If you do -f, it's fine. Or 2, yeah.
So this forces it to overwrite the current one. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to have like 30 or 40 my components
Exactly.
in your list.
But what's going to be interesting is what does that actually do on the side, right? These were 2 totally different components, right? So we'll see how well it handles what was currently there.
Do you know anything about the versioning? I guess is another question.
Versioning is handled on source control, right? So on this, right?
Well, like if you think about from the old portal side where you have, like a script include or whatever, you have versions down below on a related list.
So these versions are there. Oh, so just go back to your terminal. So what the component actually is it's made up of those 4 tables, right? So the sys UIB toolbox component, the sys UX macro component, like those lib components in the source script. So like those are actually tables in ServiceNow that you can go see that reference your new component. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's some of that is version, but not all of that, right?
So gotcha.
Cool. So let's go to your UI builder and just hit refresh. And you'll notice that it was magically replaced, which is great. Like that's what we wanted. And now if you actually like click on the outside, not the click me button, but like click on that component. The other thing I wanted to show is we added 0 properties on the right. So there's no configuration. So we'll make sure we add some configuration there to show you that not only can you do input for the person interacting with it, but you can also configure the component just like you could configure other ones. So
does that overwrite? Does that not change?
So if you click like the plus button underneath, yeah, like in the middle. Yeah, click add. Let's add another container just for funness, and then click the plus, and then now you should be able to find the super simple one.
Yep. Oh, I see. Okay.
So click that one. And so
how do you remove components?
You can click those 3 dots and remove them. Yep.
There we go. Okay.
Cool. All right. So now that we got it deployed, let's open that and just make sure that what our code did works as well. Click me. Hey. Yep. Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. So now let's go into the code and we'll talk about a few different things. So I didn't organize this code as well as I would have liked. So let's start with line 36, the view. So the first thing is what this view is doing is it's the thing that's actually gonna return like your HTML. So on line 56, it's doing that HTML work. And so if you look at what that's doing is on line 58, it has some input box. And then on line 59, it has a button. And then line 60 is it returns some results. And you'll notice that some of these values or the on click are referencing other things, right? So, we're gonna, what that's doing is on line like 37 and 38, we're referencing things from the state or state properties. So just kind of keep that in mind that what we're doing here is in your view on line 36, we're passing in state, and then we're saying, hey, pull out some of this information from the state and set it to variables that we could then use. After state, the other thing we're passing in is update state and dispatch, and that's because we want to update the state, when some action happens, right? So for example, on line 58, we're doing an on blur that calls the function called pass input, which is line 40, which will pass in what that value is. It'll trim it, and then it'll update the state. So it's not actually making a call on blur. It's just storing your state as you go. And if you ever are troubleshooting, you can console log state a lot of places. That's really helpful to understand the state of your component. Because in React, things don't execute in like a sequence, they're event driven. So the event here was this pass input or this on blur that is calling this pass input. And then that event has an update state, which is, updating the state. So, and then, the other important one here is on line 59 is the button click, right? And so for button click, when that button is clicked, it's going to call line 46, which says, hey, take in, input table, which remember we've updated state. So we know that that's correct. And then dispatch. So dispatch is call another event. to incident fetch requested with these parameters. So that's kind of like what this component is doing. And, obviously when we're doing dispatch, there's some things we wanted to understand about dispatching. So the way dispatch works in line 49 is it's going to look at your action handlers, because we're passing an incident fetch requested with this data. So if you go to line 71, you'll see we have an action handler for incident fetch requested, and it's saying call this function fetch incident effect, right? So again, we're not sequencing, we're doing events, right? So then if we scroll up to where that event fetch incident effect is, it's saying go make that HTTP effect. Remember that node module we installed to make the table API. And we're going to pass in, we're telling it that we have an object that we're passing in that has those data. So that table, that query parameters, and then based on how the result of that effect, whether it passed or it gave like a 200 success action or like a 500 error, we're going to do another dispatch of incident fetch succeeded or incident fetch failed. And so in the success after line 16, where it says incident fetch succeeded, we're going to line 21. And the reason why is because if we scroll down to our action handler, just to let everyone know, for our action handler on line 73, we have a succeeded, which calls that function handle fetch incident succeeded. And so in succeeded, we have, because this is an action, we have the object action, and we also want to pass an update state because we want to update state based on this action. So this action has a payload, and then we say, hey, this payload has some results. So this is the 10 results that we're getting from our incident effect. And then we are going to do some data with that, right? So we want to create some HTML out of that data so that we can then display it, right? So that's where results comes in. So that fetch incident succeeded is saying, hey, go update the state, right? To say a result is equal to this HTML that I just generated from this payload that I just received. So, so that's kind of at a high level what this thing is doing. It's going from, the simple storing this input data somewhere to updating the state after it stores that input, to dispatching when the button is clicked, to calling an HTTP call, to then receiving that data or that payload, creating some HTML out of it, updating the state, and then displaying that information. Woof.
Yeah. And so this kicks off all the questions in my mind. I'm like, oh man, now that we've got something happening where we're talking, getting data and presenting it, I start getting curious, and I'm like, okay, well now, why do things do the way they do them? I'm not used to React. I'm used to Angular, and I know how those things work. But like, one of my first questions is going back to what you were saying about the onBlur isn't really doing anything but setting the value of input table. Does React require that something to happen, some sort of event to cause that to set? Like, do you have to have that there? Would it not just automatically set input table just anyways? Does it not work that way?
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, you
really?
Because this is event driven, everything needs to have some sort of event, right? Okay. So like that input table, if you look at line 38 where that's being referenced, it's saying that the state has this value of input table, right? Originally, like there's some initial state for it. And when that value you just put in, that you're saying, because data is you can't just mutate data in React. Data is immutable. You have to take the action to update that value.
Okay.
So, yeah, and so I do think people are going to struggle a little bit because, like,
oh yeah,
just because
like Angular is much easier, where you have your ng model and it's just updated. As if you type something in, that updates the ng model real time, right? There's no event other than you typing to cause it to happen, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this is going to be a struggle. I already see myself having issues just because I'm not used to the way these things are built. I'm used to the way Angular does it. And so this is going to take me some time to do that. Another question that came to mind, and it might be a twofold question, I don't know, but I was thinking about this section here, and we're using the API to do the calls. Do you know, and you may not, and that's okay. Right now with like the Angular way of doing widgets and so forth, you have the server side script where you can run actual server side code or call to a script include to do stuff like that.
Yep.
Is that available through the React system, or are we bound by the only being able to use the API?
Whether or not you're bound by it, I don't know, but whether or not I would recommend using just the API, I would recommend just using the API.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be my recommendation. I haven't seen examples where you could just use glide record right in here. And so I would probably like stick to using just the API. But
okay,
you know, the more I dive into this, the more I find stuff. So I don't actually know if you can call glide record directly here.
Okay. I just wonder because, sometimes I offload a lot of scripting to a script include and call it through the server side.
Well, you would build components, right? You could build components that their entire job is just to, do server side processing, right?
Sure.
Just as like this create HTTP effect is actually from this module called @ServiceNow /UI-effect-HTTP. I envision like you being able to create other modules like that abstract the API part,
right?
So that you get these functions that are just easy to use for you.
Okay, now that makes sense, and it does really. I mean, it opens up the flexibility. It's just I'm at such an infant stage here that it's like so overwhelming on what needs to be done and whatnot. Now, another thing I think we should talk about too is in our setting up the list items, we map it to kind of create the iterators, or at least the multiple pieces we're going to get back, and then we kind of convert it here to some HTML. I know when we were doing this originally, this is what we found to be the way to do item, right? A list of items. Do we know at this point, like, there's not really a way to iterate through here? Like, with Angular, you have ng repeat. We have to do it this way and map it out to deal with it, right?
So again, this would be an example where you may create a function that, abstracts the map part, and you call that function and it handles it in a different way, right? So from what I know from a React standpoint, when you want to iterate through something, you use map. Like that's just kind of the route you go. Cool. So let's scroll down. So we talked about action handlers, and then so we didn't really talk about initial state here. So on line 82, that's where in our view, we're able to pull something needs to exist in the initial state if you're planning on saving that data or manipulating that data. You'll get an error if input table didn't exist, for example, or result didn't exist in the initial state.
Right. You got to set them up to use them.
The other thing is around properties. So the difference between properties and state. So properties are the things that are going to be configurable on the ServiceNow UI builder, whereas state is just internal to your component. So kind of keep that in mind when you're developing this. Like, is the initial state where this is just like an internal variable, or do you need this property to be exposed so that you can configure it? And so in order for that to work, I think there's actually a few other things. So to show, like, notice that properties didn't show up for us when we deployed our component. So here on the right-hand side, it didn't show up. And that is because we didn't configure something for it. And where you go is go into your UI now-ui.json. And so inside here, I'm going to give you some more more fun things for you.
Some more oven code.
Some more oven code for you. So this one took me a very long time to find. So I'm super happy to be able to share that so you don't have to go through it. So essentially we're setting properties, and the property exists there and it works, but the problem is we're not telling the component when we deploy it. You know what? Oh, and by the way, that goes underneath the line 3. Like you could put it on after line 3.
You mean so, like here?
Yeah, exactly. And then just make sure it has perfect. So like essentially what this is, so what we just pasted is, one, we're defining what our actions are so that someone could see those things. And we're not even going into events, and then properties, like we're also defining that these are the configuration items that will show up on the server. So if you save this and then redeploy, that should kind of work for us. Yep. And so the thing that we didn't really talk about is exposing events. So like, let's say, we're firing off of these events or these actions that are happening, but we're not allowing this like ServiceNow to do anything on those things, right? So kind of keep that in mind, that we're not actually defining events that the system could then, potentially use. And you'll see that on other ones, like when the button is clicked, like do some event, right? Or configure some event. Right now we're hard coding that event to say when the button is clicked, it has to do this, right? But if you wanted to allow the UI builder or the person putting the component in the agent workspace or the portal, you can allow them the flexibility to do something with that event. Does that make sense, John?
Yes. I probably need to see it in action to
yeah. So after you deploy it,
better.
Let's we'll quickly discuss it. So if you refresh, and so let's click on it, and so now you'll see on the right hand side, hey, we now have our property show up. And if you notice, if you remove that table and type in like problem, like it's actually looking at your instance.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, you're yeah.
Yep. So just so that's how you modify that config side of things. And then we talked about how you modify it with your data by pulling it into your view. And so on the right hand side, the events tab. Yep, notice there's no events here, but let's add another component here. Like let's just add the list component just to kind of show you, John.
Yes.
Yeah, let's click add, type in list or another container. Perfect. List, any one of them. Now on the right hand side, there's a lot more config. This is a very complex one. And then click events. So you'll notice here that they allow you to say, hey, how do you want to handle the event rather than us handling the event? So like that's kind of the, a little bit of advance, but the idea is give the developer on the UI builder, like you're essentially able to create more reusable components in this world. Whereas like your widgets in Service Portal, you're building a widget and then that widget, you only have the like options parameters, right? To, make it configurable. But this allows you to create something like a component and allow the person, when they place the widget or the component on the page, allow them to configure it. Does that kind of make sense on the differences there, John?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I because I'm thinking, as I compare the two, obviously that's way more flexibility available to the low code, I guess, if you will,
Mhm.
or no code solution, right? Because they can just drop it on here and be like, oh well, actually I want to be able to do something when they click on a row, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Versus where that's kind of, there's not the most you're going to get is, it's always assumed when you click on a row it's going to go somewhere, right? So all you may get is where it goes to be able to change, but it's always going to be, it goes somewhere. It doesn't just, or it doesn't allow you to make that different, right?
Yeah, and so
Not
the
on the
difference
fly
here is,
anyways.
like, if you save this, like you save our page now and then open it, if you click on any of those rec and then go to open, because you didn't configure any of those event handlers, you click on any of those, nothing will happen,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, it's good and bad, right? And widgets, it's like, it's nice because you'll know that it'll just work for the out of the box ones, but like maybe I want this change to open up a related thing, right? Or something like that. I don't know. But um, so kind of. And another thing, because you remember you changed that property to problem, if you click me, you'll notice before it did incidents, but now it does problems.
Yeah, and that's
So we're,
widget options kind of have that same thing. I mean, you can set the default and it'll do it this way, and then
mhm.
you can, once it's filled in, it'll do it the other way. But that, I do like that you can actually set that, um, easily enough here, right?
Yep. Yep.
That's very handy. And no, I mean, I definitely see the benefits of moving towards this. Obviously, I'm still a little shy of it because it's so new and I just don't know it.
Yeah.
But that's how I was when I first started Portal. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing here. This is
Mhm.
overwhelming. It just
Yeah.
takes time.
Yeah. I think there's like, you need to understand basic React. So like there's got to be some class you take that's React focused.
Yeah.
And then there's like some class you take that's ServiceNow focused, because ServiceNow is, it's doing things a little bit differently, right? Like the update state, right? The properties here, like they it's React under the hood, but ServiceNow is trying to make it easier on you. But because they're trying to make it easier on you, like it's going to be different than your just Stack Overflow searching,
Right.
right?
And see, I think that's kind of the same failings with current Portal, right? You have Angular, but then you have the way ServiceNow does Angular.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, though, the translation's not difficult. Um, you really kind of just split things up and know where each part of it is, and it works fine. And I'm sad that I'm sad to see that it's kind of the same way here too, where they've taken it and then it's ServiceNow's version of it, where there isn't that direct look at Stack Overflow and just paste it in and it works. Right now, you have to do a little bit of abstraction or a little bit of uh, um, conversion to make it match how ServiceNow does it. That's always been kind of a sore spot with me, is that it's not just
Yeah.
direct, right?
Yeah.
But
And it would be hard to make it direct just because like React
sure,
changes so fast, right? Like they need
right.
to like put out, like just like Angular, right? The Angular that Portal's using is like 4 years old, 10 years old. Like,
Well, so we're, what is it, version 1.7, and they're on version something in the double digits.
yeah, yeah. So
And that's expected though. They can't just keep implementing the new versions, right? Because you've got, and this it's even the same with like Font Awesome, right? You've got an older version of Font Awesome. You can't just throw in the newest stuff without a lot of regression testing, because if you put in the new version of Angular, what does that break for everyone that built stuff, on an older version?
yeah,
Where's the,
yeah.
you'd have to have some sort of conversion layer or something like that, and that, there's all your processing. I understand why you can't just keep going with the new version, but
Mm.
I wish there was something in between where you could at least move, or where it would move faster than it does.
Yeah. All right, let's you want to stop screen sharing and we'll kind of close it off because we're a little over.
Sure. Yeah.
So today, just kind of to recap, we, got you logged into the instance, right? Using that UI component login. We did a profile set as well, just because after the fact.
Just to make sure, because I thought the numbers weren't matching correctly.
Yeah. We created an online project. We, out of the box, just developed on it. We then made some code changes to it, and we deployed it multiple times.
Right. Yeah.
We touched on properties, so like configuring those properties from the UI builder. Talked about state, an initial state. We talked about events or dispatching events that are like your on clicks or things like that. We didn't talk about event handlers from like configuring those in ServiceNow. So I think that's like another advanced one we could do a whole talk on. But that should get, and then we talked about like, making calls to your instance. So that should be able to, you should be able to create components after this, right? Like just this one.
You should be able to create a super simple report, right?
Yeah. I mean, getting into like pulling in dependencies of like D3 chart or like, your favorite node. Like what's cool is because this is built with NPM in mind or like the node framework in mind, like you could pull in, D3 and be able to start using D3 commands like, right away, or, high charts, right? Like there shouldn't be anything blocking you from, hey, there's some awesome module that makes your life easier. Put that in your package.json, install it, and then like, run with it. So,
that brings up another point. I was talking, this actually came up earlier today where in consulting, you'll find clients are very shy about having external calls to libraries, right? Because you can do a lot of CD in calls, right? So if I want D3, I call the CD in. Well, there are some clients that don't like that and they want it to be localized. So now you've got to take D3 and figure out how to convert it to, your UI scripts or whatever inside ServiceNow and make sure everything calls correctly. Where this, if you're just doing an NPM install, it's all done for you. It's all there. It's all brought in and wrapped up nice and pretty with a bow on it. Where Portal, not so much. And I can definitely see some benefits there, versus how we have to do things now.
Yeah, there is. It is kind of interesting that I wonder, because you're actually deploying the code of like all those node modules for you to your instance. I believe. I could be wrong. So I wonder how ServiceNow handles that. Like if the plugin that you make is doing external calls, like you may not be saved from looking through D3's node modules, right? And making those changes yourself. So
interesting.
It is definitely something to consider. I wonder how ServiceNow is addressing that. Because I can totally see that being an issue. But you are right. You are deploying that node module that you get from the internet, packaging it, and then storing that state so that doesn't change, right? Your CDN can't change, right? Like that code will always work that way. But the question is if that code you chose has like a bug or it makes a call, right? Like then you're potentially making that call every time. So
yeah, a week later they come out with some huge security patch, and you're like, oh.
You're like, all right. But the good thing is you should just be able to npm install and then deploy and be done.
Unless you're like a week out of your project already, you're done. It's in prod, and you're on something else now.
Yeah.
But that risk runs everywhere, so I don't know that it's much different. It's just easier to fix now, because you can just reinstall it and deploy again.
Cool.
Now this has been a great one. I love these 3 episodes. I think this has been a great learning experience for me, getting my feet wet into the React components. This has been really fun.
Yeah, I'm not a React expert either. So I was like,
Me either.
yeah, I wonder, it would be fun to like bring on a React, native or React, expert and see what they think of ServiceNow. But I'm worried they may just like trash talk it, or they may be like, oh, this is awesome. Like, it's super easy. Like, you just learn these other helpers, like you're done. So
It would be interesting to know.
cool. All right. Well, thanks. If any of you enjoyed these podcasts, we try to keep them, every 2 weeks or so. We try to do them on Wednesdays. We may do one next week to catch up because we're a little behind.
Yeah.
And yeah, if anyone has any thoughts, like let us know. We're happy to dive into some of the technical stuff.
Yeah. There's always good topics to discuss for sure.